Lawrence O'Donnell. Good evening, Lawrence.
Hey, Rachel, welcome to the 10 p.m. time slot tomorrow night. Have fun with it. I'm in California, where I'll be covering what's happening in the California elections tomorrow, going around to polling places. And, Rachel, this really is, in my experience, the single most suspenseful election day in California, and as long as I can remember, including because of the fact it is so suspenseful that I don't even know how I'm going to vote tomorrow.
Really? Wow.
It's one of the, they've turned us into strategists, right? It's become so complex because it's all about who are the top two finishers for governor, who are the top two finishers for mayor of Los Angeles, and the top two finishers for every office. And so, as a voter, you end up having to make strategic decisions. You have your favorite candidate. Let's assume you do. It might be that the strategically helpful thing to do for your favorite candidate is vote for the person who you want that candidate to face in November to make sure that person is in the November race. You know, it just turns you into a political strategist, and this one has been more difficult. And then there's the issue.
Are you really going to make like a bank shot decision like that about who to vote for rather than just voting for who you like?
You know, I resist it. I resist as a voter being turned into a politician. And this is one of those times where I do believe tomorrow I'm just going to cast my vote for the candidate who I think is the best candidate. I think I'm going to go with the simplest possible approach. And I've actually, when people have been asking me about it, and they've been telling me about all these complex strategies they're bringing to this calculation, I end up saying, you know, it actually sounds too complicated. What about just voting for the candidate you want? But this is the way it's happening, and I've never heard it like this before, and I've never waited this long, including because the developments have been, you know, so surprising. There's shifts in the polls, some big surges in the polls, some big drops in the polls, and so you don't know. You know, 10 days ago, you didn't know if your candidate was necessarily even viable tomorrow, you know, and so, you know, this was one of those times you had to wait.
They call it a jungle primary, but in this case, it actually kind of feels like it's literally a jungle fight. Like you're just like, all you can hear is like shrieking noises and seeing things rustling, but you can't quite tell who's going to come out, out at the end of it. It's going to be fascinating to cover. I've got like about 700 pages of stuff to read tomorrow to prep for our coverage tomorrow night, just because everything that I previously prepped on this is obsolete. So.
Yes, that's the way it's going. The most suspenseful California election that I've ever witnessed, especially about my own vote.
Well, a bated breath. See you tomorrow, Lawrence. See you tomorrow night.
Thanks,
Lawrence.
Rachel.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Dead for now. Dead for now was the first report today about Donald Trump's slush fund of $1.776 billion that he was planning to give to people who were convicted of crimes against the United States of America in their attack on the Capitol on January 6, 2021, to try to overturn a presidential election for Donald Trump, to try to kill police officers on the way to doing that, and to try to kill the vice president of the United States while they were at it. Donald Trump wanted those people to get money from the federal government. And now, dead for now. Dead for now through Donald Trump's criminal insurgency group that attacked the Capitol on January 6th. Dead for now are the words of an unnamed White House source who told Mark Caputo at Axios, it's dead for now. But for the Democrats in Congress opposing the Trump slush fund, it is not dead enough. And very much to Donald Trump's surprise, I'm sure. In fact, I'm sure he doesn't realize this even now. It is not dead enough for Donald Trump either. It's still alive enough to cause Donald Trump serious legal problems now of his own. Because the incompetent buffoons around Donald Trump who call themselves lawyers in the Trump Justice Department and in the White House and the lawyers who represent Donald Trump personally, because they have appeared to have wildly outsmarted themselves in putting Donald Trump in serious legal trouble now with a federal judge, the kind of legal trouble that Donald Trump's Supreme Court did not spare him from in their decision granting Donald Trump criminal immunity for possible crimes that he might commit as president. The Supreme Court didn't foresee this situation and couldn't protect him from it. The Trump slush fund, accompanied by a Justice Department promise that the IRS would never be allowed to investigate any possible Trump tax crimes that Donald Trump or his family may have committed up to now, was the single most preposterous development in Donald Trump's litigation history, which is full of preposterous developments. And now it looks like the Trump lawyers on all sides of that one went way too far. Donald Trump pushed it so far that Republicans turned against him in the House and in the Senate, and the Republican Speaker of the House reportedly told Donald Trump today that the Republican House would vote against Donald Trump's slush fund settlement if it comes to a vote in the House. And so it's dead for now, which means that Donald Trump's political power in the House of Representatives is also dead for now. Donald Trump's political power in the Senate on this issue was already known to be dead. The Senate Republican leader, John Thune, had said all along that the Trump slush fund was not a good idea. And as time went on, John Thune became more and more clear that he personally was against it. And then Chuck Schumer promising to bring up votes in the Senate on Donald Trump's slush fund. Last week, Republicans in the Senate, in a private meeting, attacked Donald Trump's acting attorney general, who used to be Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyer, Todd Blanche, who created the Trump slush fund. Those Republicans in the room, some of them said that it was the harshest questioning of an administration official that they have ever seen in any closed meeting in the Senate. But it's already too late for Donald Trump to easily kill the $1.776 billion political monster that he created. It's too late. Senate Majority Leader John Thune was not satisfied today with unnamed White House staffers saying it's dead for now.
Does the administration need to be clear that if they drop this, that it's not coming back, so that those Republicans who were skeptical during that briefing feel okay moving to proceed?
That would be the ideal outcome.
The ideal outcome is dead forever. There's the Republican Senate leader John Thune saying the ideal outcome is for Donald Trump to come out and officially say it is dead, not just for now, it is dead and never coming back. And while he was at it, John Thune said the other thing that is dead in the Republican United States Senate is the Trump ballroom, what Senator John Ossoff this weekend called the Jeffrey Epstein Memorial Ballroom.
Does that mean also dropping the ballroom?
Well, again, I think that the confining the bill to its original intent, which was a very narrowly focused reconciliation bill that just addresses the funding for those two agencies, is the clearest path to ultimately getting a bill on the president's desk.
So no, the Trump ballroom will not be in the Republican reconciliation bill. John Thune saying the Republican Senate will not be voting for the $1 billion Donald Trump wants from them, for what Senator Ossoff will be calling the Jeffrey Epstein Memorial Ballroom if a vote on the Trump ballroom occurs on the floor of the Senate. Donald Trump is politically radioactive now, and Republicans in the House and Senate know it. The Republicans in the House and the Senate know that their worst enemy in the coming elections in November is Donald Trump. And Democrats in the Senate and the House have reason to believe that the enormity of Donald Trump's corruption and the corruption in his administration is getting through to voters and could be a decisive issue in November. And the problem for Donald Trump and the Republicans is that even if Donald Trump comes out right now and says the magic words that John Thune wants him to say, that the Trump slush fund is dead and dead forever and the ballroom is dead with it, it is now beyond Donald Trump's powers to stop the investigation of his slush fund that 2 federal judges have undertaken, with one judge ordering a hearing on the subject next week on June 12th. That is the federal judge in Virginia who last week ordered a complete stop to any and all activity involving the establishment or operating of the Trump slush fund. But the possibly more difficult legal problem for Donald Trump now is that Judge Kathleen Williams in the Southern District of Florida is using her unique power as a federal judge to investigate not just Donald Trump's lawyers at the Justice Department and Donald Trump's personal lawyers, but also Donald Trump himself. Donald Trump filed his case against the Internal Revenue Service in federal court in the Southern District of Florida in the hope of getting one of those Trump-friendly Florida federal judges down there, which can happen because judges are randomly assigned. Instead, Donald Trump got Judge Kathleen Williams, who was appointed to the federal court by President Barack Obama. And last week, in response to a motion by a group of former federal judges to reopen the Trump case against the IRS to investigate the legitimacy of the so-called settlement of that lawsuit, the judge decided to do exactly that, saying that something extremely threatening to Donald Trump's acting attorney general and to Donald Trump was possible here. The judge wrote, "A court is empowered to investigate serious misconduct as a collateral issue within the purview of Rule 11 and determine whether an attorney has abused the judicial process." It is very clear that attorneys abused the judicial process in this case, and so all of those attorneys are in serious trouble tonight. The judge said, under Rule 11, a court may impose sanctions on a lawyer for advocating a frivolous position, pursuing an unfounded claim, or filing a lawsuit for some improper purpose. The Trump lawyers know that a White House source simply telling Axios that it's dead for now does not get them out of trouble with this federal judge. But the next line of the judge's order on Friday is a direct threat to Donald Trump himself. Donald Trump is not a lawyer in the case who can be disciplined as a lawyer, but Donald Trump is a party to the case. He is the party in the case. He is the party who actually brought the case against the Internal Revenue Service, giving the case the title Donald J. Trump versus Internal Revenue Service. And about Donald J. Trump, the judge wrote this: "A party's decision to file a frivolous lawsuit for the sole purpose of forcing a settlement may qualify as such an improper abuse. If a party files a lawsuit for an improper purpose, the court may impose an appropriate sanction on the responsible party." So here is a federal judge who now has the power, depending on the outcome of her investigation, to impose a penalty on Donald Trump for doing all of this. The judge gave Donald Trump until June 12th, next week, to answer this question in writing, quote, "of whether the case should be reopened because the court was the victim of a fraud." Former federal prosecutor Barbara McQuade will join us later in this hour to consider what's coming for Donald Trump in court because of the legally perverse and obviously indefensible so-called settlement Donald Trump's former criminal defense lawyer forced the Justice Department to make with his former criminal client, Donald Trump. The stink of it all has reached the point where Senator Jon Ossoff this weekend could refer to the whole complex of Trump corruption as the Mar-a-Lago mafia. And it is too late for someone in the White House to simply declare Donald Trump's slush fund dead for now. It's too late for Donald Trump to reverse the overwhelming image of corruption on a previously unimaginable scale in the presidency. And Senator Jon Ossoff, who is running for re-election in Georgia, has clearly decided that American voters have heard enough about what Donald Trump is up to and what Republicans in Congress have been allowing him to do, that when Senator Ossoff says he's been trying to rob us, voters know exactly what that means.
Now, Atlanta, these crowds, they keep growing. Something is happening in Georgia. Every backyard, every living room is full. And crowds like this leave no doubt that Georgia is ready to do our part again to save our republic. Now, many of you are here because you recognize the urgency of opposition to this unprecedented corruption and incompetence. And you recognize the stakes of these midterm elections when Georgia's voice will be decisive once again. His presidency crumbling. Donald spent Saturday complaining on the internet. Listen to this. 6 hours, 52 posts. The president attacked the Pope. He posted his own face on Mount Rushmore and a made-up Trump Peace Prize. He announced 3 times America's back, and he assured an increasingly concerned public he's in excellent health. And when not posting, he's been trying to rob us. Have you seen it? He sued the U.S. government he commands for $10 billion. Then he settled the suit with himself to create a $1.8 billion slush fund so he can cut checks to cronies and Jan 6 foot soldiers. The same men who sacked the Capitol to seize the presidency for Donald Trump, who beat police officers with flagpoles, built a gallows on the Capitol lawn, and hunted the vice president to lynch him. Donald Trump's brown shirts. He pardoned them, and now he wants you to pay him. He's trying to put his face on the money. Did you see that? He's building a monument to himself. But see, Atlanta, he's doing these things now because no one will honor him when he's gone. Because he's a failed president and a national disgrace. And while you pay more for everything, Donald Trump wants your tax dollars for what many are calling the Jeffrey Epstein Memorial Ballroom.
Jon Ossoff showed Democrats how to campaign against Donald Trump's failed economic policies and Donald Trump's war, as Jon Ossoff said, built on lies.
This president promised a golden age. Instead, the economy's lost tens of thousands of manufacturing jobs since he launched the big illegal tariffs, and more Americans are falling behind on their credit cards than any time since the Great Recession. Inflation's higher than when Trump took office. Unemployment's higher than when Trump took office, and consumer sentiment's at its worst in 70 years. The president promised to fight for the working class and end foreign wars. Instead, he cut your health care to give the rich another tax break, and last week, yet more Americans were wounded in a war no one voted for and no one can explain. This war in Iran is the worst foreign policy blunder since Iraq. And just like the Iraq War, it's a war built on lies. Let's just update the record. On day one of the war, day one, the president said it was running ahead of schedule. On day 10, he said it was very complete. Day 21, getting very close. Day 32, leaving very soon. On day 39, the President of the United States said a whole civilization will die tonight. And on the next day, day 40, he declared total and complete victory. Day 67, great progress. Day 79, the clock is ticking. Today is day 92. And on day 92, Iran's ballistic missiles and drones have not been destroyed. The Strait of Hormuz, which was open before the war, is still closed. The regime is intact, along with its stockpile of highly enriched uranium. A stockpile Iran only built after President Trump shredded President Obama's Iran deal. You remember that? Just weeks into this war, they said they'd need $200 billion to fund it. Let me put that in perspective for you. $200 billion would fund a decade, 10 full years of nationwide universal pre-kindergarten. The America First president who said he would end foreign wars to put America first and focus on America's working class. Instead, now he says, quote, it's not possible for us to take care of daycare, Medicaid, or Medicare. Now he says all we can afford is war. Now he demands we cut cancer and Alzheimer's research to throw even more money at Pete Hegseth's Pentagon. While the Financial Times reports, quote, Pete Hegseth's broker looked to buy defense fund before Iran attack. Y'all remember they promised to drain the swamp? Instead, this is the most corrupt administration of all time, and everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. The Mar-a-Lago Mafia has taken American corruption to spectacular new heights. Donald Trump's rise is a symptom of this deeper disease. And I suspect many of you are here because you recognize that our task is not just to contain his wickedness, but to cure the rot that gave rise to it.
That's how you do it. We'll be right back. The reason I've shown you so much of what Senator Jon Ossoff had to say yesterday in his re-election campaign is that he does seem to have found the framing that is most likely to succeed for Democrats on all issues that he discussed yesterday. It wasn't just corruption. But yesterday, after cataloging in detail what the senator called the corruption of the Mar-a-Lago Mafia, he ended his comments this way.
I suspect many of you are here today because you're deeply troubled by the pain so many of our fellow Georgians and fellow Americans and fellow human beings are enduring right now. The terror of a child watching ICE take away his mother. The despair of a cancer patient losing coverage mid-treatment. Maybe they don't care in the White House or in the governor's mansion, but that ache in your heart, that pit in your stomach, that's what reminds us we're all in this together. That we're not just one United States, we're one united people. E pluribus unum, out of many, one. And see, this is what small men like Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and Stephen Miller will never understand. That our national greatness flows not through our blood or our genes, but through our ideas. Let's save the country again. Let's make sure they hear it all the way down at Mar-a-Lago that Georgia will bow to no king. Thank you. God bless you. Let's get to work. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Joining us now is Senator Gary Peters of Michigan. He's the top Democrat on the Senate Homeland Security Committee and a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee and Appropriations Committees. Senator Peters, thank you very much for joining us tonight. And one of the reasons I've decided to show so much of what Senator Ossoff had to say yesterday is it's very common to hear, and I'm sure you've heard it, that the Democrats need to find their voice in this campaign season that is not just an anti-Trump voice, but that both joins the anti-corruption statements that the campaign has to make with the actual governing policy positions of Democrats, which is what the senators seemed to do yesterday. And for viewers out there who I know are looking for this kind of speech, they're looking for this kind of statement that they can understand as a candidacy going forward. This seemed to be the best one recently that I could present. And you have more experience than anybody in the Senate right now electing Democrats, having run the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee a couple of times. Usually people only have to do that once. You did it more than once because you did it so well. What is your view of the way Senator Ossoff is approaching this campaign? Is that the kind of framing that you think is going to work for Democrats?
Yeah, absolutely, Lawrence. And I'm glad you showed so much of that speech. Senator Ossoff certainly knows what he's talking about. He knows how to frame the issues. And ultimately, you know, what campaigns are about, it's about a contrast. When you go into vote, you're going to choose between two candidates, their vision for the future. You also look at their record in the past and what they have done or not done and make a decision. And so as Democrats, as we're campaigning around the country, certainly we have a lot to talk about in terms of the disaster that the Trump administration has been and the fact that Republicans basically rubber stamp all of these horrible things that happen daily in the Trump administration. But it's also about a forward mission, a vision of what we stand for, to make sure that people can afford themselves, not just to get by, but actually have an ability to live a fulfilling life, to be able to afford basic things like groceries, fuel, to be able to make sure your children have a quality education, affordable health care, and when it's all said and done, that you can retire with dignity. You know, that has always been the Democratic message. We're going to double down on what we stand for. And it's going to be very easy to paint that contrast of where Donald Trump is. You know, we've talked about this slush fund, this horrible abomination that is absolute corruption. I know you started the program saying that some person said, well, it's dead for now. As Democrats, we're going to make sure it's dead forever, not just now. We have to kill that. And we also have to do things like make sure that what they haven't said is dead is the fact that Donald Trump negotiated with himself to make sure the IRS can't audit him. And here's a president who we know has paid little or no income tax. When everyday Americans pay their taxes, so they pay it as good citizens and understand how important that is for a strong country. And yet you have a guy like Donald Trump that doesn't pay anything while he leads us into war that costs everyday Americans right now. It's been estimated just in energy cost, nearly $500 extra to them. That is putting a severe strain on Americans. That's why they want to change. You know, the Federal Reserve did a study, and it showed that about 37% of Americans would have a hard time coming up with $400 in cash to pay for some sort of emergency bill. And already in the last 90 days, they're paying nearly $500 in energy costs. That puts people in a terrible situation. They want somebody in Washington that's looking out for them, who's going to fight for them to bring down health care costs, to make sure housing costs are down. That's what Democrats are focused on. And we're going to be offering a very clear contrast. And when you offer a clear contrast like that, you win elections. And more importantly, right now, you put the checks and balances that are absolutely essential to rein in a corrupt administration like we're seeing in the Trump administration. That has to be reined in. Our founders expected Congress to stand up and hold the president accountable. That's not happening. But when you vote for Democrats and you send Democrats to Washington and put us in the majority, we will finally have accountability here in Washington and lean into the things that people care about each and every day.
Senator Gary Peters, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Coming up, it's all Todd Blanche's fault. That's what Donald Trump's fired Attorney General told the Congressional Committee. That's next with Congressman Ro Khanna.